they're opening stuff up, but they opened up a lot of things, but the buses and trains are still not, excuse me, are not going south.
Okay.
Which is super odd. Like you can go north, but you cannot go south.
Okay.
Which is like,
And that's
I would qualify it as a bit of a bummer, like because it's still it puts me on hold.
yeah.
So like I'm fine being on hold, but
Yeah.
like sure they have to create some sort of scenario where I come to accept it, but it's just like okay.
Yeah.
So like you go everywhere except south. All right. Like it's so illogical. But so I don't even like to think about it.
No. Well, then don't think about it because it's going to happen when it's going to happen. So, what the hell?
Like, who knows anything anymore?
Yeah. Well, everything comes down to acceptance, doesn't it?
I think everything comes down to what are you going to do about it?
Right. Or are you going to accept it, or are you going to change it?
Right.
And if you can't change it, you better accept it.
Right, but I just don't like jumping to like, oh, how am I going to figure out how to accept this? I think the first question is, what are you going to do about it?
Right. That's a good idea. I mean, I kind of agree with that because, if there is something I can do about it, I better get going doing it. If there's nothing I can do about it, then I better get accepting it. Because if I'm going to fight reality and keep fighting reality, keep getting the crap kicked out of me, that's not going to make me very happy.
Yeah, I think acceptance is a good tool, but it shouldn't be your go-to.
Yeah. So if I don't go to acceptance and I go to how can I change it?
Right.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, if the go-to is how can I change this situation, or how can I change? Yeah, is it possible to change this situation? How can I change it? And what's going to happen if I change it? Versus, well, I can't change it. I can only think that I can change it. And if I try to think that I can change it and it never changes, I'm just going to get frustrated. So I'm going to have to accept it. And maybe that comes after trying to change things for a while, but I don't know. It might be just better to accept it.
I would even go with how can I work with this situation? I think acceptance is like.
Are you thinking cop-out?
No, not always, but I think that the program can like. I think that it's really important not to just to gloss over things and to jump to conclusions that you're not in control and that you're useless. Like I really think you should be really mindful of your surroundings and your capabilities. And acceptance is really valuable if the plane's going down. If you're in a plane and it's going down, like I don't know what I'm supposed to do. If you're in the middle of a pandemic and everyone's dying around you and I'm not a doctor, you probably want to get into acceptance mode or like, but even then it's like, no, maybe you should try to escape first before you just throw in the towel. And so, yes, it's not a cop-out because there's a lot of times where like, I don't want anything to do with this problem. I'm just going to accept it for what it is. I'm not putting any energy around it. I don't want anything to do with it. It is what it is. And now let me think about what I'm going to eat for dinner. I think that's where it's really valuable. I don't want to put any energy into this. I don't want to give it any thought. What I really want to do is focus on something else that's actually important to me, and I'm going to accept it for what it is and move on. However,
Right.
I just think there's a lot of times where that's not necessarily your best option. Because I do believe that you have a lot of control over your situations and your abilities and your behavior, and that you do have great power, and that you can do magical, amazing things on this planet. So the quicker that you just go, it is what it is. Well, fuck. What do you? Okay, fine. Do like go back to your job, I guess. Like go waddle over to the Baskin Robbins.
Well, you know, if I think about the Wright brothers, right? If they didn't believe that they'd be able to fly an airplane, we probably would never see an airplane, or maybe 20, 30 years later, I don't know. But they believed that man could fly, and they were convinced that they could make it happen, and they did, of course, right? And if you think of everybody who's found cures for diseases, or everybody scientists who've developed a rocket that can go into outer space, or things like that, everybody has a dream, and there's a lot of people telling you that it's impossible, and there's a lot of people saying that it's never going to happen or whatever. And then because you're persistent, because you believe in this concept in your mind that anything's possible, and yeah, for sure, anything's possible. Anything is possible, and we've learned that, right? And
Just how
so,
important is it?
right, yeah. I mean, am I going to dedicate my life to it? Because if I'm going to do something like that, I pretty much have to do that. If I'm going to find a cure for cancer, I'm going to have to dedicate my life to that.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what those are brilliant things. That's not like, that's not the go-to is acceptance in those cases. The go-to is like having a belief, and I think it's in a lot of cases it's like trusting a concept, and the concept maybe the concept you have is a concept you feel like it's divinely inspired. Like maybe the Wright brothers felt a divine inspiration in their ability to make a flying machine, and that they weren't going to just give up on it, because there was a lot of trial and error, a lot of failures, and then finally a success. And I think it only flew like 100 meters or something like that, but still, it's flying. And then eventually, of course, there's nobody who doesn't think that man can't fly, because there's airplanes in the sky all the time.
So I guess the question is, if they would have just tried 3 times and said it, and the one brother says to the other brother, hey, we should just really accept the reality here and
Yeah.
and really just call it a day, well then, like, they might have been able to have lower blood pressure and be able to go out and mingle with the family and mow the lawn.
Right.
So all I'm saying is I think there's a time and a place, and I feel like we're a little too quick to just go, it is what it is, and accept it and move on, versus like really using your intuition and your logic and knowing yourself and your capabilities, and like knowing when to fold them. Like, let's say you're about to park in a parking spot and some maniac or even like a normal person just pulls in and steals it from you in your mind, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it? Like, are you gonna pull out a gun from your glove box and make them move? Is that worth it to you? Is that like, but the point is, like, you can do things that you can change whatever you really want. Like you're in full control it's just how far do you want to take things and where do you want to go with yourself, and it's like knowing when to hold them and knowing when to fold them. And I just feel like acceptance isn't always your best.
Well, I think that's I think that's a good example of how the ego can be, if we're trying to, like, if I'm pulling into a parking spot and somebody pulls in front of me, and like I, maybe for a second or two, I might think, if I reach into my glove box, pull out a gun, and point it at him, say, I want this space. My ego says, yes, that's a great idea. You show him. Nobody's going to screw with you. But obviously that's not a good idea, because it's just it shows how the ego is run amok here, and the ego is taking control of your sanity and puts you in a place where you're not thinking straight. And so that's when you know that when you're faced with an insane thought or sane action versus a sane action, and if you can put your ego aside for just a little while here and do the thing that was probably best for everybody concerned, and let the guy have the spot, and then maybe you could get out of the car and say, I was just pulling into that spot, but you know what, it's yours now, or just say nothing and let it go entirely. I mean, when I'm able to push my ego aside and allow stuff like that to happen, because I don't have to say, you can't do that to me. Don't you know who I am? I can't allow myself to be, pushed into second place. And the reason there's a lot of deep-seated stuff that's inside of me that would cause me to, think that way. And it goes back to my own insecurities and my own self-doubt and my own lack of self-worth. And so if I can get past that quickly, the quicker I can get past that, the better. The quicker I can get to a case of acceptance in that situation, the better. Because it's not going to serve me or anybody else if I'm in a gunfight in the Walmart parking lot.
So I'm
yeah.
going to keep a little bit of this intro going, but can we do an opening? And then I have a good question maybe on this, with this vein. Well, how would you say that?
In this vein, I guess, but on this topic, yeah.
On this topic. Okay. So yeah, why don't you give us an intro?
Okay, yeah.
And then I have a question.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, from the beautiful Taj Mahal Casino in Newcastle, Ontario, it's time for Real Raw Recovery. I'm Joe Tilley.
I'm Tyler Tilley in Thailand.
Yeah, so what's your question?
Well, we were just talking about acceptance, but I'm going to slightly diverge because you talked about ego, and I was just thinking to myself, like there's a strong a common theme to relinquish your ego, or you're striving to have no ego, I guess.
Well,
I don't really
put your ego in its place. Picturing ego in place, right?
Putting your ego in place is I'm more on board with, but I think the ego is really I don't really kind of like dig into that logic as much as I would suggest of just simply like there's a time when I'm calm and there's a time when I'm not calm. And when I'm calm, I can think clearly. But I like to still think that I'm Tyler Tilley that's calm, that's thinking clearly. I don't like to envision myself losing my character or losing its good and bad qualities in order to then make a decision. So do you think that it's better to be egoless or calm?
Well, because we're human, I don't think we can be egoless. I think look, look at it this way. When I'm in fit spiritual condition, really, like if I'm in a good place spiritually, my ego, I think, is right sized. I want to say, and what I mean by that is that I don't think you can eliminate ego from a human. I don't think it's possible, but not entirely. But I think you can, you know, with a lot of work, you can get the ego chipped down to a size where it's workable. You know, like a ego out of control obviously is not a good thing, because that we're always, if I'm always acting on ego, I'm just entirely consumed by selfishness and self-centeredness, and it's not healthy for me to be like that. I know that. You know, I want to be in a place where I've got limited resentments, if not none, then limited resentments. I want to be in a place where I'm acting in a sane and thoughtful and considerate manner, and practicing principles of honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love in most, if not all, of my affairs. You know, and if I'm that in that place, I believe I'm in a good place, right? For me, I mean, I'm in a good place. I'm in a place where, when I'm spiritually fit, when I'm rocketed into that fourth dimension because of my spiritual fitness, I feel good. You know, and there's nothing that, it just feels like nothing's gonna bother me. But then I'll slip into ego, just like a snap of the fingers. I can slip into ego, and all of a sudden, like, my whole life seems like it's in turmoil, and it's hard to find any right sizedness, you know. And that's what I mean. It's like it can happen as fast as somebody taking my parking spot. And I can be, you know, I can be I can be sailing along and like feeling like I'm connected to the power, and my life is, you know, beautiful, and everything's wonderful, and all of a sudden some guy cuts me off and speeds off, and and flips me the bird or whatever, and it's like, what just happened there? And it ruffles my feathers, and I get angry, and it's like, and I have a thought that I want to chase him down, you know, and then maybe I'll have a second thought that says, no, you don't want to chase him down, and or maybe I'll even have a third thought that, no, you don't want to chase him down, and God love him, he's just got his own shit going on, so let him have it. You know, I mean, that's a process, but you see, I guess the point is that I can, I can never fully eliminate that ego. I can never fully eliminate that that part of me that comes up with this idea that you can't do that to me. I'm not going to allow you to do that to me, which is based on my ego, and which is based on character defects that stem from my lack of self-worth, and stuff that I've been working on for a long time. And sometimes I realize that, yes, I understand that. I'm past that. I don't have that. I don't suffer from that anymore. That's lack of self-worth, because I got a connection with the power that gives me incredible power. I don't have that. How can I have a lack of self-worth when I'm connected to this tremendous power and all that? So that's when I'm in a good state of mind, that's where I'm at. But when I'm not, I'm slipping away from the spirit. I'm acting more in ego. Then I become offended. Then I become agitated. Then I become this person that does not like you doing bad things to me, and I can't handle it.
You ever think there's a time where something inside you says, I'm not going to let you do that to me, and that's a good thing?
Yeah, I think I think that can happen. It's kind of like, yeah, I can think of one actually. Like, I remember it was like, uh, it was this guy used to always, like, he used to pick on me in a psychological fashion. He would, every time I saw this guy, he would try to humiliate me and make fun of me and stuff like that. And you know, and that was then I kind of cleaned up my act and got into boxing, and I was and won the provincial novice championship, and and I ran into the guy at a restaurant, and he said the same snarly, snappy, crappy that he used to say to me. And for some reason, like, it really bothered me. And I walked over to him and I told him to shut up, and I told him not to call me those names anymore. And he called me a name again, and so I smacked him,
Smacked him
and
how?
then I punched him in the head, punched him in the face, I punched him in the mouth,
Right.
and he said, he threatened me, and I punched him again, and then he just kind of sunk, and he was pretty much unconscious, and I felt really good about it. And I remember doing a fifth step with a priest, and I told him about the incident and exactly how it unfolded. And I said, "Do I owe this guy an amends? Do you think I owe this guy an amends?" And he said, "No." He said, "You don't know the guy. The guy is a bully. The guy was you know, he really he got what was coming to him, and it's okay." And I thought, okay, and so, like, I've never felt like I really owe him amends. I mean, if I ever did run into the guy, right? If I ever did run into the guy, I suppose I would say to him, "Listen, I apologize you know for punching you out. That was wrong, I guess." No, no, because maybe it wasn't even wrong. So I don't know. I don't know if I would make amends. So that's there. There you go. So
Let me tell you why you're wrong.
okay.
Because you should have registered your fists as lethal weapons and you failed to do so. So you neglected your civic duty in protecting us. Like, what happens is you're walking around with loaded pistols as hands. And if had he been warned that you were carrying those firearms,
So I should have issued him a formal warning.
right? So
I
what
didn't do
you
that.
so when you do
It's
see
like
him,
the
just
police,
say,
like when the police say, when they arrest you and they say, they read you the act there, and then they tell you about seeking legal counsel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I should have said that to him. I should have.
right?
I
No,
should
but
have
I
had a prepared card that I read to everybody when I ran into them on the street. Say, I just need to warn you, sir, that my hands are lethal weapons,
are
and
registered
if
as well. Yeah.
and they're registered with the police, and if I use them against you, I want you to know that you have been officially warned. So
Right.
therefore, I'm not responsible or liable for whatever happens to you as a result of you pissing me off.
Right. So when you do see him again, you can also warn him again that, sorry, I failed to warn you that I am carrying lethal weapons.
Right, right.
And that still remains to be true today.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Thanks. Yeah, for straightening that out for me. So I see where I was wrong now. But yeah, so I mean, there are times when there are times when you know, sometimes people just get what's coming to them, and sometimes on rare occasions it has been, I guess, you know, um, I guess okay, you know,
In your best
it's been
interest?
okay. I don't know if I don't know if my best. Yeah, probably my best interest.
So
It's just like, put it this way: the guy never bugged me again. He was at a. He was. I saw him a little while after that, and at a I think a house party or something, and his buddy saw me. I saw him tell his friend that I was there, and they left. So it's like I didn't ever have to worry about him doing that again. So, and probably he probably thought hard and long about bullying other people after that, I'm going to guess. So, I mean, I guess it had some positive results. And yeah, and I don't know, it felt good. And I guess that, it felt like it was the right thing to do, and I didn't regret it, which is, I guess, what you're getting at. It's that's certainly an ego thing, right? I guess
right,
there's
and
some ego involved,
so
but
this
there's also vindication and other things. I guess which is also connected to ego. So I don't know. Yeah.
so this is interesting because this is an anecdote and a personal story and a line or a specific attitude or um, characteristic that you definitely don't share often. In fact, like I think I knew this story prior, but
Hmm.
it's not a typical message that you bring up. So there's one thing to be like a vigilante that puts on a cape and goes around and popping everyone in the mouth, or you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and then there's the logic. Then the opposite side of that would be to just be a meek pushover, no a spineless fish, like a spineless jellyfish, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So somewhere in the
Yeah.
middle. But that's so I'm just giving you my train of thought here is that do you think that that part of you is completely washed away, or do you think that that's a part of you that exists but just never comes out, or is that part of you, and not even physical necessarily altercations, but something where you just go, I'm drawing the line here, and like where you don't even play the game with yourself, where like, oh, this is your ego, you need to change, oh, you can't behave like this, that's not love and tolerance, you're not using our code, like don't you think?
No, no, sure. There is a time and place for that, right? I guess it's like, again, it's part of being human, right? And that's, if there remember there was a movie with Charles Bronson, which a vigilante movie, and it was like, I don't know, they turned into a series of what's Death Wish, and it's like, and he was, like, his wife was murdered and raped, and his daughter, and like a horrible thing by these thugs, and he went around slowly but surely riding the buses, riding the subways, and taking care of people who were like the people that killed his wife and
Right.
daughter. And every time he did that, like, I mean, I would watch and go, yes, he's getting those guys back and everything else. But that when you think about it, it's like we have. I mean, I have that part of me that thinks that people should get their comeuppance, right? But at the same time, it's kind of like that particular thing is a little bit overkill, right? Like, I don't think I'd watch that again unless there's, like, I just happen to be parked in front of television set, and it
Right.
happened to be on, and I just flicking through the channels or whatever. And yeah, I don't think I'd go out of my way to watch that movie or movie just like that. But there is a side to me that likes to see people get their comeuppance, right?
Right.
And I'm assuming that's involved. I'm assuming that's connected to the ego. And sure, it has to be connected to the ego. And because if I was being loving and truly, if I was thinking like, what would Jesus do, right? If that's how my that's the way I wanted to live, that I would think, nah, he would forgive them, and he'd just like, he'd probably, let it go, and it's also a movie, right? It's also a movie, and it's also
so is Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus is a movie too.
Well, it's a story. Jesus was a martyr, and Jesus was the opposite of Charles Bronson.
Right.
And we praise both as society.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you right now, I'd rather have Bronson on my side than a guy who fills up my glass with wine.
Who changes your water to wine?
Yeah, like Jesus, come on. Yeah. Don't you know who you're dealing with?
Well, if you go back to the old First Testament God, he would have been sending a lightning bolt to all those bastards who killed Charles Bronson's family. You know what I mean?
Turn them to salt. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he'd be turning people to salt left and right and center. So yeah, that stuff is. The Old Testament God is much more vengeful, and yeah, and then the Jesus came along, and everything changed. And yeah, but you know what? It's like I think in our heart of hearts we know I think we have a sense of what is right is and what wrong is, and I think we all have to make, I guess, that determination of what right and what wrong is, and what is, good and what isn't good for me. Like if I take an action and it's not good, I know it. And if I take an action that is good, I know it. And this particular time, like at the time, it seemed like the right thing to do. It felt good. And when I rehashed it later on, it felt good again. There were other things that I did in my disease and stuff like that when I hurt people, and I knew it, and it didn't feel good.
Right.
And I have had to make amends for that, right? But this just wasn't one of them. This wasn't one of them. And yeah, because I remember when I was in grade 8, there was a guy that in my class that I used to pick on.
Right.
And his name was Roger. And then one day, Roger popped me in the mouth and split my lip. And my tooth went through my lip, and it was I have a permanent mark in my lip as a result of that. But you know what? I stopped picking on him. Right. Yeah, I stopped picking on him. It took me that I got infections in my lip. It probably I got a permanent little knob in there, and that was what I needed to have happen to teach me that lesson, right?
So I think your question isn't what would Jesus do. Your question should be, what would Roger do?
What would Roger do? Roger would pop him in the mouth.
Yeah.
Roger taught me the lesson. Yeah. Yeah, because I didn't expect him to pop me, and he just did. was like, what? And I'm bleeding, and yeah, good for him.
And I just wanted to bring up that point again. I don't know what it means. I'm just fascinated with it. I said, Jesus is a martyr, a religion based on God's son that died for humanity's sins, right? And
Yeah, among other stuff. Yeah.
he's worshipped for that. Well, I think that's the
Right.
number one thing, right? Like that he's saving you. He's saving you. He's the barricade between you and this vengeful God.
Well, yeah, but I don't think that the God is vengeful.
No, but in the Bible,
I think that was
it is.
I think that was an interpretation.
No, I know, but hear me out. You're missing my point.
Right.
So
Okay.
there's God's son that was put on the planet, from what I gather, and he was crucified, right? And in theory, that was for humanity, the people on this planet. It was for, he died for our sin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he took on the brunt for humanity because he was God's son.
Right.
And then you have, and he didn't fight back. He just accepted it. He was a martyr.
Turn the other cheek. Yeah.
Right. That led to his demise. Imagine the shit that guy
Did it, but not really, because his demise was also part of the saving of man.
Well,
right?
yeah, he was resurrected.
So, yeah, it's not his demise. I mean, it was his earthly depart. It was him departing in his earthly form, but certainly not his demise, because of who he was and what happened, and the circumstances around it and everything else. It all had to happen that way in order for us to have Jesus the way it is, right?
To be relieved from our sin.
Right.
And then you have somebody who says, nah, you're not going to put me on the cross. And in fact, I'm going to hunt you all down.
So Charles Bronson, Jesus.
Right. And then I was
there was a spoof on that from Saturday Night Live. Remember that?
But was that Bronson? That wasn't Charles Bronson. That was his face. That was
that was the guy from Django Unchained, and he was Did Jesus Unchained? I think it was the SNL spoof.
Oh,
it was
really?
actually quite comical. Yeah. So it's kind of like, what would Jesus do if Jesus was like Charles Bronson? That's kind of what it was like.
Right.
Yeah.
But my point is that you have a character who takes vengeance in his own hands and becomes his own becomes the master of his own destiny, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he is worshipped. And then you have Jesus, who's a martyr, and he's also worshipped. Like when you said, like the comment, like what would Jesus do?
Right.
So you're aiming at what in that indication of saying like what would Jesus do is meaning like how can I lie down and take it, and as if that's the admirable route to go versus.
But yeah, but you know what? That Jesus had his moments too, Ty. Remember, like there was times when there was a market on the Sabbath, and people were selling goods and stuff like that. And he walked in the square and he started flipping tables over. Like it's like Jesus had his moments when he just said enough is enough. And I think that the struggle when it comes to Jesus is that the dichotomy of the humanness and the divine, right? And that's, I think, what there was always that kind of struggle in Jesus, just like I believe there is in all of us, right? Is that the God side versus the human side, and I and that's that dichotomy. I mean, I put it this way: the Charles Bronson Jesus is gonna, don't piss me off, or you're gonna get it type of thing, and going out and blowing people away, and and that's in my gut, in my heart. I know that's not right. Whereas, if I think about it, and not even think about it, if I go with my gut, and I realize that, to look for the peaceful, loving solution, that is the right way. That is, and I feel that in my gut, and I feel that in my heart. Like if you draw that into what's going on in the world, right? Like, just, I know that love and peace and tolerance and connection, those are the things that are right. Those are the things that I want to be striving for. I get maybe a little bit of a fix, a little bit of a rush from that vengeance thing. But I think in my heart of hearts, in my gut, I know that the right way is to do God's will.
Right, but you just finished telling me how popping that guy in the mouth was the right thing to do in your gut.
Yeah, just like when Jesus flipped the tables over. It was the right thing to do, even though it wasn't turning the other cheek, even though it wasn't, because sometimes a guy needs a shot in the mouth. and I'm talking about little situations here. I'm talking about specific incidents. Yes, the time comes when somebody needs a shot in the mouth, I think. But I'm not gonna be like it. Those times are very few, very far in between.
I don't think they are.
Like if I think of all the guys I popped in the mouth, that not too many were justified in that spiritual sense.
But don't take it so literal. So what I'm getting, I gave you these two extremes. I gave you a Charles Bronson, and I gave you the other extreme of the Jesus figure. And
right,
what I'm saying is that, like, there's somewhere in the middle of that would be ideal for me. So what I was really getting at is that I do think Jesus was a really cool, idol and godlike figure that I think is admirable. But I wasn't trying to go down that rabbit hole. I was just thinking outside the box a little bit. And it's interesting how somebody who seeks vengeance and cleans up, quote unquote, the streets and takes things in his own hands, that leads to murder, really, that he's like murdering people. And then you have somebody who literally dies for humanity's sins on the opposite end. And then I thought it was kind of interesting that they're both idolized in a weird way, maybe not quite as much as Jesus, like he probably lose that battle. But it's just interesting that the concept that you should stand up and do what's right, and that might mean savagely murdering gangsters, is like celebrated. And I'm not, now I'm not saying that for me, now I need to take that into account. And I'm just saying, on a personal note, when you said sometimes someone just needs to be popped in the mouth, I'm not looking at that literally. I'm looking at that logic, though. That logic is sometimes it's like, no, I'm going to take the parking spot. You're going to sit this one out. And I'm okay with that. Versus like, oh, what would Jesus do? Like, why is it like, why can't it be more balanced? Why does it have to be like, I'm going to strive for this ideal when I don't think it's necessarily the right ideal? Like, you jump into justifying it as love. And so that's an easy out. Like, okay, well, if you just go with love, well, then you'll always be right, because how am I gonna argue against just loving the world? But what I was saying is like, yeah, but you've just spent the last half an hour telling me how it felt good to pop that guy in the mouth. I wouldn't qualify that as love. It might have been loving to you. was probably loving behavior to you to go like, no, I'm not going to let people walk all over me. I'm not going to let this situation walk all over me. And that's kind of what brings me
Right.
back to the original
Yeah.
opening statement about like where I was just questioning. I didn't really have anywhere for this to go, but I was just questioning about I would like to balance myself. How I like to balance myself is like somewhere in the middle of Charles Bronson and Jesus. I think that's my ideal. That would be I think the most rational, logical way to live life, because I just know myself as a human being. Like some days I'm really calm and godlike, and some days I feel like I'm Charles Bronson.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's just how I feel. Like why do I need to change all that, adjust it, and like why do I want to spend my life trying to fix that when it's just like, okay, how can you adapt and utilize what you got in your pocket? Like sometimes it's good to
Yeah.
pop a guy in the mouth. Sometimes it's like, no, I'm not going to let you butt in front of me in the line. Sometimes I am going to let you butt in front of me in the line. Like both are good. Not just everyone gets to butt in front of me in line because that's what Jesus would do.
Right. Right. No, that's good. Yeah, I like all that. That's perfect. Because yeah, I agree.
So
Because
those are my
sometimes
final
it's
thoughts.
just that's right. I agree with that. Because sometimes I got to cut myself some slack for being who I am and human and being okay with that. Right. I want to
I
be
think that's
okay
the
with
best part.
who I am, and that's another part of the acceptance too, is accepting my humanness. Right. Accepting the fact that that once in a while that Charles Bronson side comes out. Right. And then once in a while I get popped in the mouth. Right. It's all good. All right, ready to wrap it?
Yeah.
Okay. Serenity we prayer. God, grant us to serenity, to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, wisdom to know the difference. That's where the magic happens, baby. That's where the magic happens.